So this past weekend, the Jets upset the Eagles 20-14, beating one of the only remaining undefeated teams in the Philadelphia Eagles. And in this game, it was all the Jets defense, forcing 4 turnovers, 3 Jalen Hurts interceptions. The offense, luckily, didn't do anything to hurt them in the sense of turnovers, didn't play that well, but did just enough to allow the Jets to hold on to this one, making the Jets now 3-3. And the Jets in their season right now, the hope is, can they stay afloat? Can they potentially be a wild card team? In the hopes that Aaron Rodgers has a very quick Achilles recovery, comes back for the playoffs, and the Jets can, maybe experience that success they had hoped for when they made the trade with Green Bay this past offseason. And so far, they've been inconsistent. They've been up, they've been down. The Jets defense has played pretty good overall. The Jets offense has definitely held them back. But the past few weeks, we have seen Zach Wilson at least improve in the area of not turning the ball over as much. In the past 4 games, he has 2 touchdowns to 1 interception. And so the formula for the Jets' success right now has been Jets offense, just please don't turn it over. We know you can't move the ball that much. Just don't turn it over. The defense will keep us afloat. And that's exactly what happened yesterday. The Eagles lose the turnover battle 4-0. And any team where you have 4 turnovers, the other team has 0, you're probably going to win that game. And so the Jets are now sitting at 3-3. And if we look at the Jets through the first 6 weeks, they really haven't been an elite unit in the sense of, top 5 defense in the NFL. I think they're slightly above average so far if you look at all the numbers. They're the 13th ranked scoring defense in the NFL. They are 22nd in rush yards per attempt allowed at 4.4. They're the 15th ranked passing defense in the NFL. There are 2 areas where they've really excelled is in takeaways. They're tied for 4th in takeaways per game at 2.2, and they're the 5th best red zone defense in the NFL. So they've done some good things, they've done some bad things, and I still think they're a very solid unit. And one thing that's interesting to note about this defense is they've played really, really well against top-tier elite quarterbacks. Against, more average to below average quarterbacks, they haven't really produced as much when it comes to turnovers. If you look at through the 6 weeks, versus Josh Allen, week 1, Mahomes, week 4, and Jalen Hurts, week 6, they've only allowed 3 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. That is crazy against those guys. But then against Dak Prescott, Mac Jones, and Russell Wilson, they've allowed 6 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. And so the thing is, when you look at this defense, they can have some really, really good games. They force a lot of takeaways. They're a pretty solid defense, but they're somewhat inconsistent at times. The fact that you can do what you did against Allen, Mahomes, and Hurts, but still you don't have as much success when it comes to turnovers versus a Wilson, a Mac Jones, a Dak Prescott. It's just tough to continuously and consistently win games, mostly due to the fact that your offense isn't really doing anything to help. That's why, if they had Rodgers, if this was a, top 10 offense in the NFL, the Jets would probably be sitting at 4-2, maybe 5-1 right now with the way this defense is played. And the thing is, they're so dependent on their defense. If their defense ever has a somewhat average to below average day, it's going to be tough for this team to win games. And so when you look at the fact that you're in week 6, you're sitting at 3-3, I think this is a pretty good representation of what this team is. They're a somewhat mid-tier team with a pretty good defense and a below-average offense. If we look at the offense so far, 6 weeks in, they're the 22nd ranked scoring offense in the NFL, 14th in rush yards per game, 32nd in pass yards per game. Not good. And they have a bottom 5 O-line with the 5th most sacks allowed per game at 3.3. And so far, what the Jets have really been asking of Zach Wilson is, they want to see some improvements. They want to make sure he's not turning the ball over. And if we look at the past 4 games, he's only turned the ball over once, which is pretty solid. But if we look at his stats, last week only versus the Eagles, 186 yards, 57.6% completion percentage, 73.5 rating. Week before that, 73% completion percentage, 199 yards, 0 TDs, 1 interception. I mean, he's just not been very good, and it's hard for you to be competitive when you have an offense playing as poorly as they have. And so the real question is, can they continue to win enough to hold out that hope that they can potentially be a wild card team? And if we look at last year and we look at the playoff seeding, the Ravens were the 6th seed at 10-7, the Chargers were the 5th seed at 10-7, and the Dolphins were the final seed sitting at 9-8. Also important to note, the Pittsburgh Steelers were also 9-8, didn't make the playoffs. So if you finish as 9-8, there's a chance you potentially make the playoffs, but there's also a chance, you could be 9-8 and not make the playoffs. And the thing is, I don't think this is a Jets team that is going to make the playoffs unless Rodgers returns early. If he can somehow return early December, I think they can finish off with enough wins. But right now, the way this team is playing, I just really don't have the confidence that they're going to be able to hold out long enough and be consistent enough to be a playoff team, especially when you look at the other teams they're facing in the AFC. Because right now in the AFC East, they're not going to win the division. Dolphins 5-1, Bills 4-2, so their only hope is to be a wild card team. And as I said, I just don't think they're consistent enough on defense or good enough on offense to get that wild card spot and allow Rodgers to return and make this, one of the better teams in the NFL. But that is all I have for this video. If you want more NFL content like this, feel free to subscribe down below.